I've been in game audio for a long time. I'm not quite sure what I do.
I got started in game audio and game music kind of by mistake.
So I took that class, and at that point I was like, this is what I want to do.
Wait a second, you mean like video games? And he was like, yes.
I got started in game audio and game music kind of by mistake. Well, not mistake, but it found me.
Just before I finished my master's, I got a call out of the blue from a friend who said, hey, Brian, we need somebody who can write music and also program assembly language, which is a kind of a low-level programming language, for a pinball machine company, doing sounds. And I was like, I'd been playing pinball all my life.
I was a guitar major and composition major and was learning about samplers and synthesis, and we were recording with tape, and digital audio was just coming into our world. And a game audio gig kind of presented itself to me. I applied and got this job, and thinking, oh, all this time, it just was kind of, the lights kind of went off.
Yeah, I started in the industry thanks to a computer from the late 80s and 90s called the Commodore Amiga. I owe so much gratitude to my brother, who was the owner of said Commodore Amiga, and I remember the day that he took me into his room and showed me this not so shiny, kind of beige grey computer system. This is the Amiga 500, and check this out. And he showed me these fantastic games. And what's a little different about the Commodore Amiga compared to, say, consoles, and for the time would have been the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis or the Super Nintendo. What was different was that you could play these games and get really, really inspired, but then you can actually make them yourself as well.
Certainly, the early days, it was very, very different industry. Everybody's familiar with the phrase chiptunes these days. It literally refers to a very small, very cheap synthesizer chip that was inside either the game console, the arcade system. And the reason that we had to use that, believe it or not, is something as mundane as just how much memory is on this thing.
One of my absolute favorites is a game called Defender. In Defender, it's noise. And I never knew this, but what I found out was that in Defender, the way they made that noise was actually they took a random chunk of the game code and pumped that directly into the sound chip. And because it's text as the game code, that creates the noise. That is so cool. I love that. It's actually a wave table. And a wave table is like a very, very short wave that's looped and repeated over and over again, and it's noise, right? And you're slowing down the rate as you're playing it, which makes this kind of sound effect like that. That's a good example of what the focus was in the early days. It's like, here are our limitations. We have 64K. What can we do with that? Pretty much nothing, but let's go for it.
One of the earlier Sega Genesis games that I did was Desert Strike, and I think the entire audio budget for that was 64 kilobytes. And this because of the technology at the time for delivering video games was ROM cartridges. That stands for read-only memory, right? You'd go to the store, you'd buy the cartridge, you'd put it in your game system. So game sound back then there were no wave files. It was really just these synthesizers.
The very first moment I thought, that's what I want to do, I must have been 11 or 12, and I was in my brother's room, and he showed me this game called Double Dragon 2. And Double Dragon 2 had a soundtrack by a demo scene composer. Demo scene is like a community of artists, programmers who were working together to push the Commodore Amiga and the Commodore 64 before it to the limits of what its hardware could achieve, hence it being a demonstration or a demo. So the score for this game was composed by this demo scene producer called Uncle Tom. And I could just so clearly remember that moment, standing there, listening to the title music for this game, thinking, my God, the computer can do that?
Yeah, it's evolved a lot. I mean, when I first started out back in the in the early days, it was the best resolution you could get was 8-bit 11K. I used to have to edit the instrument definitions in hex using HexEdit on the Mac, and it was like really low level.
I don't remember historically what will be the first game that had voice in it, but the one that I remember was a game on the Commodore 64 called Impossible Mission. And it had this rather revolutionary sound sample of a voice saying, "Stay a while, stay forever," layered over with so much grit and distortion and lo-fi goodness. But yeah, there might have been ones before that, but that's the first that I can remember.
Stay a while, stay forever.
The first big change was, which was kind of a false start, was the first PlayStation in 1995. That was Sony PlayStation, the Sega Saturn came out, and they no longer ship games on these ROM cartridges. They shipped them on compact discs. And as composers, we were like, CDs, great, we know how to make music for compact discs. So everybody got very excited. But it turns out a compact disc doesn't really hold all that much data. And although some of the early games had a lot of sort of studio recorded music, we didn't have to use MIDI anymore. Pretty soon, the game developers were like, wow, 600 megabytes, I can put a lot of dialogue in. I did the first version of Madden for the PlayStation. And the only piece of music in that game that is studio recorded is the opening theme. All the rest of it is MIDI. So that kind of was a false start. And a compact disc just was not big enough for all the sound and music to be created as WAV files. So we were kind of back to synthesizers for a large chunk of things.
So I think the industry, when I joined, I often talk about these 3 waves of audio technology, which I think are really important to understand a bit about the context in how audio works in video games. So the first wave was very much proprietary game engines, proprietary audio technology. The only way you could really get your hands on that technology was to work at the company.
I got started in game audio after graduate school. I went to Cal Arts and studied electronic music with Morton Subotnick. And this field was just kind of emerging. And I found my way into working at Microsoft. And so that's where I started as a contractor. And it was days of CD-ROM and early games and early times of using WAV files,
There was no one to talk to. I could talk to no one. No one could help me. How to get into the industry, nobody could tell me that. How does game audio actually work? There was no YouTube channel for that. YouTube didn't even exist.
This was the 90s, and there weren't career paths for game audio or game music. So, but all the skills I learned kind of paved the way. I already knew how to work digital audio workstations and synthesizers and samplers, and all of that was sort of the groundwork for working in game audio. There were no tools at the time, everything was proprietary, so you kind of learned on the job.
We were making up solutions to problems that we didn't realize we had until we ran into them. And it's really this interesting combination of it's a very highly creative field, music and sound design and dialogue. It's art, creating art with sound, which I love to do, combined with a very, very technical details in terms of how do you actually get this stuff to work. And it's a very different set of challenges, for example, than just doing linear media like a film or television, which is very, very well established, right? That's been around for 100 years.
Audio was like secondary in the gaming industry.
the importance was for me to make sure that the communicating value of audio was there. So I sat down with them and I said, you know, give us a team, we'll start developing tools because we need tools. But it's normal when it's a young industry, there's no supplier for tools. So everybody has to build their own tools.
The real turning point was 2000, 2001. 2000 was the PlayStation 2, 2001 was the Microsoft Xbox, and those shipped on DVDs. And that really was a giant inflection point. Compact disc will hold about 650 megabytes of data. A DVD, there are multiple flavors of it, but a DVD is anywhere between 4.5 and around 7 gigabytes. And so for the first time, really, you could go to the recording studio, go record the Chicago Symphony, go record 120 minutes of original score, and just put that into the game as is. And so we discovered that what we really wanted was pretty much all of the tools we have in a linear production studio, all the racks of gear and lots of tracks, but with the ability to control it all in real time.
And in 2000, I've looked at that and I said, you know, it's not the need only of a company, it's the need of an industry. And so that's why I decided to leave and found Audiokinetic.
Il n'y avait aucun outil audio, que l'audio était à un stade rudimentaire.
Yeah, around the sort of early 2000s, we had the second wave, which was, I think, defined by middleware. So you had, you know, like folks like Audiokinetic coming onto the scene. You had Fmod kind of evolving into a sort of more UI-friendly kind of interface for audio. When
I was at Xbox, about a year right after we shipped, we actually kind of had an interesting mandate. Our chip on the Xbox was way better than the PlayStation 2s. I mean, light years ahead. It was like Pro Tools on a chip. And so it became too difficult for the people who understood the audio side to get the implementation to happen the way they wanted to. And so we actually got the go-ahead to create a tool called XACT, X-A-C-T, stands for Xbox Audio Creation Tool. And the idea there was, let's create a graphical user interface that speaks the language of composer and sound designer. And so that was sort of some of the earlier middlewares. It's not the first one. There were tools from Nintendo. Musix was a tool. There's a tool called Gems. Saturn and PlayStation both had kind of tools that were along that vein. But again, the idea is to really put in the hands of a sound designer using a semi-familiar interface and terminologies that they understood.
By giving the power to the audio creator was to break the dependency with the programmer.
You know, it used to be back when I first started out, it was every game was different. Every game you had to reinvent the wheel every time. In fact, I did a session at a conference called Project Barbecue, which was exactly trying to answer that question. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel every time we want to do this kind of stuff? And that was kind of when these middleware solutions were starting, and Wise was one of them. And so you had a lot of people who were doing audio, but they weren't really audio people. They were mostly programmers with an interest in audio. And I had come to game audio as an audio guy, as a musician, with an interest in programming.
It was clear to a lot of people in the industry that there was a problem with the current way of integrating sound in a game. And that was a barrier to the artist realizing their vision. But the solution was not obvious.
There's a couple of things that are constant. One is, and this is because, for going way back, when I graduated college, DAW didn't exist. Pro Tools didn't exist. Obviously, Wise didn't exist either. And if you ever saw the first versions of Pro Tools, the computers were crashing all the time. And most early tech was that way. Computers still crash. Technology still breaks on us. No matter how much we bulletproof it and do our due diligence to make it work flawlessly, I'd say it breaks a little less often these days than way back in the day.
It's actually a good thing that today we don't have hardware and that we've fully went software.
We started with that. Is it possible to bring all the tools and all the control to the artists themselves so that music implementers and sound designers and dialogue people can really integrate all the assets into that, craft anything they need to do, and deliver an experience that is meaningful for the game?
There was a 24 hours turnaround since the moment you integrated the sound in the game. It went to the build machines. It took like 12 hours or 13 hours for the new version of the game to build. And then you were able to listen the sound and then make a modification, rinse, go over again. And now we have hot swap. We are playing a game, we drop something in Wise, we rebuild the banks, boom, it's there. And that level of interactivity gets closer sometimes to a jam session when the interaction is real time.
Iteration is key to getting a great product. When I first started in games, literally from the time I made a change, if I wanted to, change the instrument on a piece of music, I would make that change in a text editor. I would compile something that took 15 minutes to compile. I would burn it into an EEPROM that took 20 minutes to burn the EEPROM. I would yank out the EEPROM of the game and put in the new EEPROM. So just making a change took about an hour. And that iteration certainly improves the quality level drastically, because it's all about iterating.
People might take this for granted, but for the longest time, up to pretty recently, in the mid-2000s, if I wanted to change when something happened or the volume of something, I had to go bug a programmer, or I had to change something in a script or in an Excel file or something, or to work in a deep, challenging proprietary engine. So be grateful that tools like this now exist, because it is night and day.
Our first GDC? Yes, I remember. 2005. It was really interesting because we didn't have much money. And basically, usually it's a year before if you can get a booth on the floor. So, and we decided actually to book a suite in a close hotel to the GDC. So, yeah, so we held private demo in that suite. We had a lot of fun, and that was actually where it started.
I remember the first time I saw Wise. Exact had been out for a couple years, and we were very happy with it. And Simon showed me Wise, and I was just like, I saw this thing, which was what I had envisioned Exact to be like 5 years from now. And that was kind of the first time I saw Wise, again, which was really the let's take this idea kind of to the nth degree and put in a deep tool set and lots of very complicated features that let those people who understand the nuance that we want to have in game audio, right? And even clothing foley is going to be different every time you move around.
昔ワイズとかそういったミドルウェアがなかった頃っていうのは、サウンドエンジンから、作っていく必要があったと思うので、この部分クリエイティブなプロセス、それも一種のクリエイティブなプロセスではあるんですけど、音のサウンドデザイナーとか作曲家が考えるようなレベルでの、クリエイティブなプロセスまでに行くまでに結構ワンクッションあったと思うんですけど、ミドルウェアとかができたことによって、作曲家とかサウンドデザイナーとかもそのツールとかを理解して、使いこなしていくことで、どういった作曲を最終的にどのようにアウトプットしていくかという、プロセスも変わっていくと思うので、ある意味なんかその昔よりもクリエイティブな方法が増えたような気はします。
And so the ability to use a standardized set of tools not only allows you to do better work, but also expands the pool of people that can work together.
One of the things I knew I wanted to do was start an event to help people understand better, particularly those coming from linear media backgrounds, film and television and so on, how games work and what they need to know in order to do games.
So when we started, there was mostly the AAA market. Right? They were AA games and AAA games, mostly. And then the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, there's a lot of studios that shut down, a lot of people that had been laid off. And it's at the same moment that the App Store and the Google Play Store arrived, so where you could do digital distribution by yourself. Because before that, the industry was controlled by, a bunch of, like 20 publishers were controlling 95% of the games out there. And games were in boxes and sold at Walmarts and EB Games.
When I started in the industry, games were the thing. And then maybe you had like a major expansion pack. But then you were on a sequel. Nowadays, games are, first off, they take years, 2-3 times longer than they used to make to actually get from start to finish. If you go back into the early PlayStation days, you would think that these teams were on massive amounts of drugs in order to be able to actually churn out the content they did, because games are coming out every 12, 18 months. It doesn't happen anymore. Now it's more 3, 4, 5 years of development. And the budgets have also just ballooned so much that the risk in building a game is so much higher than it used to be. When you have a $2 million budget, which is a very large number for the average human being, that used to be a big budget game. And now this is an indie game, which kind of blows your mind. And you're getting into gigantic games with $200 million, $300 million budgets.
Got it. Bad requests, pick socket.
I think what we're in at the moment is kind of the third wave, where we have the middleware. We also, the waves don't kind of get rid of the previous waves. They stick around, so there are still people using first wave proprietary technologies. But I think the third wave is characterized by kind of custom scripts in between middleware and game engine, and the digital audio workstation, and so lots of custom things in between those things, which are written very specifically for specific games. So there's a little bit of a mix of proprietary and middleware in the third wave.
You used to be able to have games with just a few sounds, small amounts of music, it could be low fidelity, but now the expectations are that games have thousands of lines of dialogue, a full orchestral soundtrack, sound effects for everything, on approaching the levels of film.
Games are evolving and at the same time diversifying, so they can cater a lot of different audiences. So there was a time when the games were about communicating with everything through a gun, through destruction. There wasn't much what we call pure narrative experience or only walking experiences. So now you have games with the highest technology emulating real textures and reflections and ray tracing and everything, but at the same time, the pixel art never died. So you can go into simpler chiptune or 60 musicians, full orchestra score, and we're talking about the same thing. The medium has evolved. I don't think someone can say now, oh, there's not a game that actually I can relate to.
Most video game engines today, or I would say they actually all do, not most, but all come with some form of in-engine audio system. which in all cases I've seen is fine. The problem for me is that they often offer a ready-made solution for the easy part. They don't offer a solution for the deeper systems, the deeper creative, interactive processes. Meaning that then I have to invent more wheel, which is why I prefer to use middleware, because it comes with a ready-made package that always works the way that I expect it to work. I don't have to invent a new system to do things. Likewise, FMOD, doesn't matter which one it is. The problem with most in-game engines, again, is that they usually don't scale when the project becomes really big.
Unity, for example, is, to me, how I got started. It was accessible. I could pick it up and start fiddle around with sounds, but then there's nothing there, basically. You have to, there's mixing structures and sort of basic 3D audio in the sense of attenuation and whatnot, but it doesn't provide you any tool for randomization or any music transition tools or all the other stuff that you might want, reverb, zones, and propagation, occlusion, obstruction. You have to set up yourself all of it.
Unreal's meta sound system is very exciting. It's more of a, like Unreal's blueprint system, it's more of a node-based approach, and it's really, really good fun. I feel like there is not too much of a risk at this point of the middleware functionality crossing over with Metasound's functionality. I think that they're kind of trying to do things in a slightly different way, and that's really exciting. I like the fact that Epic, the way that they're approaching Metasound, is like, okay, yeah, FMOD-wise, they're there, they're great, everybody's using them, they're a main pillar of game audio, 2 pillars, I should say, of game audio, that's fine. We're just going to try and go this direction and see what other kinds of interesting functionality that we can achieve. So I would never choose to use either of those two over Wise or FMOD myself, but certainly the way that Epic is approaching their development of Metasound, very exciting. Basically, Audiokinetic is much more fully featured for the sound designer, taking a lot of the responsibility of the technical implementation away from the programmers and giving that power directly to the sound designer. FMOD is kind of the mirror of that. FMOD requires much more collaboration with the programmer. The FMOD itself is a little bit more primitive in a good way. It means you can work faster. It's kind of quite fun to use because it's very quick, relatively simple. However, where on that spectrum between the sound designer and a programmer, the needle falls closer to the programmer side in terms of implementation. So there's positives and negatives to both of them.
And for me as a programmer, it provides sort of a set of functionalities that I would already have to implement. I don't have to go and do mixing or handling of assets in that low-level way, or there's a lot of things that come for free.
It really empowers the sound designers to work in a way that's highly iterative and also very stable in a way that we weren't able to do before. So, now I don't have to hit up the audio programmer every time I want to put in the sound. I can just get the hook set up, and then I can just be in the middleware and kind of endlessly tweak things until they feel right. So I feel like for the kind of games that are being made today, which are a lot more immersive, a lot more dynamic, I feel like I couldn't ever imagine making a game without middleware today. So.
其实在中国，手游是一个非常非常巨大的市场，有上亿的玩家，它是一个超出你想象的一个游戏的市场。以及现在我们要做多端，要做全平台，我们可能一个项目同时要上 PS5、PC 和手机。 这一些我都经历了过来。
The difference between mobile games and console games when it comes to sound, right? It's mostly about the way that players are experiencing the game, right? The amount of time that they will spend playing the game, how they are going to listen to the game as well. And then there is, of course, some technical challenges as well, like performance, budget for memory, and so on, right? Like also the processes when creating sounds for video games, because profiling a game in a mobile is not as easy as, for example, in a console. You have more limitations in terms of budget, memory, and so on. So all those things at the end of the day are having an impact on the decisions that we take during the development.
在手游里面，其实会有特别多的性能优化、兼容、稳定性的问题。我们当初是想在手机游戏当中去复刻单机游戏的这个 massive 的 soundscape 但会发现，在某些手机上面我们可以做到，但在某些上面又会产生一些很奇怪的问题。而我们现在会更淡化平台，我们的游戏可以在 PS5， 可以在 PC， 甚至可以在电视机上面玩。我相信未来也会有一些层出不穷的这些音频的技术问题和设计问题等待我们去解决，所以我也觉得很兴奋。
In Peggle 2, I was able to record live orchestra. We went in and recorded an orchestra phrase by phrase and section by section. So what we got were all these live recordings of individual pieces that became what I called a mosaic. On the other side of that, when I was given a 5 megabyte limit on the mobile version of Peggle Blast, I created sound libraries, sample libraries from those same orchestral recordings, so original sample libraries that was then triggered via MIDI all in Wise. And that was, on the other side of the spectrum, a different breakthrough that I could not have done with any tool that was available other than Wise.
但是对于我来说，在音频方面，我始终有一个偶像，就是 Guy Whitmore， 他在 Peggle 2当中做的声音设计，他只用了几兆的空间，就做出了那么厉害的互动的作品，是我非常崇敬的。我也期望在手游当中能够有更高效的、更精彩的设计，这个是我们追求的目标。所以总的来说，在手游里面，我们还是期望能够继承我们的前辈单机游戏和影视作品这些优秀的文化的积淀，我们期望我们能继承他们，然后在手游里面也能把它做得更好。
There's a thing at GDC called Carousel Con. And it used to be, I feel like a little bit of a progenitor of that. Because at GDC, it used to be that Damien used to say it was like herding cats. We'd get a bunch of audio people together. We'd go down to Whole Foods. We'd get salads or whatever, and then go eat by the carousel.
It started as a bunch of people just exchanging about game audio, what's going on today at the conference, what did you see yesterday, and stuff like that. And it evolved into becoming a podcast.
And at first it was, me and Damien and, 3-4 other guys. And then it was like 10 people, and then it was like 25 people, and then it was like 50 people. And now it's like this whole thing. It's like it's taken on a life of its own. And I remember, sitting there one day looking at this, large group of people and thinking, how diverse it was. This is not a bunch of, middle-aged white guys like it always used to be. They're young, they're female, they're black, they're gay, they're whatever. It's like it's a very diverse community. And I encourage that. I think that's a very good progression in this industry. Because it used to just be such a sausage fest. And it's kind of grown that way. And I think Wise plays some part of that.
And so that was a great way for me to hear the people talking, hear what they talk about. So I was looking forward the first time I was going to GDC to be a part of that morning game audio podcast.
It was one of my favorite stories is when I was
starting out and I was at my first GDC, I didn't really know anyone. I knew a few people from Slack and through Twitter and whatnot, and I really felt out of my element. And earlier that day, I think it was Tuesday, I had met Damien Kaspauer earlier that day, and didn't know anyone. He didn't have any reason to be nice to me really or anything like that. And a few hours later, we met outside of, I had just left a talk or something like that, and we met outside, and he was heading into an Uber or something, and we said hi, and he was like, hey, I'm really busy right now. I'm going to this thing. Do you want to come? Jump in the car. And it was one of these moments where we went there and I met a bunch of people and everybody was super lovely. And just like the hospitality of Damien and the rest of the people I met there really made me realize that I was in the right place. For one of the first times in my career, I really felt like, yeah, okay, this is a place I want to be.
To me, one of the fundamentals of our growth as an industry is that ability to leverage each other's experience, learn from each other, and carry those learnings forward into what it is that we're creating, because ultimately we're creating these things first and foremost for ourselves and for the people who will understand what we're trying to communicate through sound. And so in that way, the community is the beating heart of game audio and our industry.
When I was really, really young, I wanted to be a chef for a long time. I started cooking when I was like 6, and I just kind of like fell in love with it.
Yeah, when I was a child, I was ready to grow up. I knew I wanted to just be an adult, and do all the fun things, stay up late, and just little things like that.
There was a time when I was playing so many video games, and I was thinking, I'm not sure that it's like humans who make these things because they're so magical and amazing. So I thought it would be amazing if I could be part of that one day. So that was kind of the dream for me.
I wanted to be a writer pretty early on, fiction. And in about 3rd grade, I was reading The Hobbit, that sort of fantasy media. And if we dig back through journals, there is a couple chapters of what was probably supposed to be some huge epic trilogy, but reading it back, it was clearly, I was just distilling aspects of The Hobbit that I thought were cool.
I think my childhood dream was, at some point, was becoming like a musician of some sort. Then figured out that wasn't really what I wanted to, perform on stage. And then I had a period of time where it was game music composer.
When I was 5 or 6, I really wanted to be a meteorologist. I wanted to study weather and go chase storms and be on the news. Obviously that hasn't worked out, but I can make rain sound effects, so it's close enough.
My childhood dream, besides from being a police officer as every other kid, or a fireman and so on, I quite quickly wanted to be not a rock star, but work with, just do stuff with a guitar, or any kind of expression tool, where, be it a guitar or whatever.
So when I was a kid, or maybe middle school, junior high age, I actually wanted to be a brain surgeon because I thought that would be really cool. Brains are really interesting, and I love learning and kind of figuring out how people work. And I think maybe that's why I ended up a manager, because I love kind of figuring out new ways to communicate with people and figuring out new ways to connect either projects or people and people together.
I mean, it's pretty cliche, but I wanted to be like an astronaut, basically. That was like my dream.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a rock star. That was the job I wanted. If I get a call from somebody saying, yeah, I need you to tour for 6 months with Styx or something like that, I'm out of here.
I got started in sound design working on movies and documentaries and animation films. Then in the second part of my career was like 15 years ago I had to build a system for an interactive theater piece. And I thought, wow, I'm really interested in interactive sound design.
I'm a musician. You know, I come from a family of musicians. My first favorite album when I was 6 years old was Switched on Bach. You know, so I've always really loved electronic music.
I started my career as a performing artist, as a percussionist, and I played in orchestras, ensembles, and did my master's in world percussion.
And I found out there is a game industry, and they need sound designers, and it's like a heaven for sound designers. So I was like, yeah.
I played games when I was a kid, but I kind of stopped when I went to university because I could only choose between music, eating, or games, and one of them had to go.
Yeah, so I always was interested in getting into like game music ever since I played Final Fantasy VII. I still didn't really know what to do, but I started to study game design at the game design school.
I have a PhD in historical musicology where my focus of emphasis in my research is music and disability studies, and that's sort of branched out since finishing the degree in 2018 into other aspects of music and identity, so gender and sexuality representation through game sound.
Yeah, you know, I first was introduced to game audio at Berklee College of Music as a student, and kind of went to a lecture by Chance Thomas, who's a game composer, and he was talking about interactive music and all of the systems there. Of course, I was like, yeah, music for games sounds great.
I was initially interested in film and TV, actually, and so I did some short film things as a composer. But then I was always interested in games. I grew up playing games, as most people who work in the games industry do. And I found that the interactivity and the non-linearity of game audio was something that was really appealing.
I would say that my journey within sound design started with my father playing some rock records for me, actually. I was a kid playing the air guitar in the sofa in my underwear.
One of my professors came up to me and he was like, hey, I need more people to sign up for this class or they're gonna cancel it. It's called interactive web media. And I was like, what is that? And he's like, it's doing audio for like media online and games and stuff like that. I was like, wait a second, you mean like video games?
I ended up at a Danish company that was making a space 4X game. And they were like, yeah, we don't really have any music. Maybe we can reuse the music from the last game or something. And my ears perked up. It's like, wait, I can make some music. Can I give this a shot?
Santa came in and he delivered a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo for me to play. I grew up in rural Arkansas. There wasn't a lot of people who worked in games. I didn't actually make the connection that I could one day work in the gaming industry, like something that I enjoyed playing.
I went to music school from the age of 3, actually, which was like a music playground in a way. And I didn't like the limitations of the keys, and so I like to play inside the piano and yeah, doing crazy things.
I was playing in a metal band, and after a few years I realized that probably I will never be able to earn so much money as Metallica did making music. So I start doing sounds.
Games allow the players to interact with the worlds you're building. It's not just, oh, I'm watching this really awesome movie, which could be amazing and incredible, right? But you're having that interaction with the player, even though you're not there with them. They're triggering new events. They're moving through new areas of your world. Maybe sometimes in games it takes players months or years to even find some areas of the game, which means it's always evolving. You're getting the opportunity to create things that, you know, live on for a really long time, and I think that's really special.
Like, you are actually performing the audio capabilities of this medium, this game that you're playing, where you could almost be a conductor or a musician, where the instrument is whatever controller you're using or whatever other peripheral products go into this thing. And you, by performing the inputs and the motions of this controller, you will actually affect the soundscape, and the game will reveal itself and play back itself to you. And there's like, you can create fantastic things in the linear realm. It's not to take away from that, but this core difference between the two is what makes the interactivity of the interactive realm so interesting to me, yeah.
When you think about interactive sound, you have a variety of different options. Something can path and become something, a variable, right? So you can't really predict the nature of what might be. So it's always different, always fresh, and you have to solve for all sorts of different scenarios, which I love that. I love solving for those things. And so that's what I love about interactive audio.
Creativity to me is the ability to express emotions or ideas or thoughts that you can't simply just say. There needs to be more to it. And so creativity comes when you're trying to find a way to communicate that just your words aren't able to express.
So creativity to me is essentially collaboration. Like I get very few ideas just on my own sitting in the studio. As soon as I see something on screen, as soon as I hear a colleague talking about an idea, I start to get excited and I start to imagine possibilities. So for me, it's really about working with other people and getting excited about their ideas, showing them things, and then getting feedback.
And musically, you think of being in the mother's womb and hearing that heartbeat and that regularity and the idea that you come out into the world already primed for rhythm. Musical rhythm is this organization in time of just this instinctual beat that lives within us. And then we've decorated that, we've made it more florid, we've created entire systems of singing and expressing ourselves. We don't need to do that to communicate with one another, but we're all driven to do it in different forms. So creativity is humanity.
すごく人間って人って生きているといろんなところで壁にぶつかったりとか悩んだりとかあると思うんですけど、そういう時に創造性を働かせて、そういったものを打開していったりとかして人生がより充実していくっていうものなの。人生がより充実していくために必要なものだし、それは人間というか人でしか持ってないものなのかなと思うところなので、僕はゲームの開発とかサウンドデザインとかだけではなくて生きていく上での創造性っていうところも含めてすごく重要なものだなと感じています。生き方みたいなところのその生きていくためのツールみたいな感じなんですかね。そういうふうに感じてます。
So as an audio director, if I'm starting on a project, whether it's something small or a much larger project, there is an exploration phase where I'm trying to work out what the project is. I'm trying to work out what the boundaries of it are, how big this project is in terms of its size for environment. I'm also looking at what some of the main features might be, but I'm also looking at the inspiration and the references as well.
Sometimes, when we're lucky, we get involved into the process of making audio of the game from the very beginning, because there is the pre-production stage, and I prefer to have this time to create the vision for the project.
The sound design process for me really starts with talking with the developer of that feature or whatever. So if it's a level or something, I'll start with the level designer or the concept art. If it's combat stuff, I'll start with the combat designers and start with the animations and really figure out what that sound needs or what that system needs.
I create a lot of sounds using synthesizers and using sound libraries as well. So I take some references, sounds, and I try to reproduce it using synthesizers. I get inspired by some real sounds and I create my own.
Experiments that fail are still very valuable to me. This is something that's very controversial in the games industry because it is an industry. But I was somehow allowed to experiment with writing my own software synthesizers and making music out of nothing that is running inside the game. That was like my dream. I didn't know if I could pull it off, but I really wanted to try. That's how the sound of Cocoon came about.
ゲームの音を開発するにあたってゲームのプロトタイプを見せてもらうんですけれども、それを見た時にこう音が想像できるといいますか、こういう音をつけてみたい、このキャラクターにこういう動きをつけてみたいとこう想像できるようなものが、一番僕らはモチベーションが上がる瞬間ですね。やっぱり全く音がない状態のデザイナーゲームプログラマーが作った CG のキャラクターにこう音をつけることによってこうなんていうんですかね、生命を宿らせるみたいな効果があるので、そういうのが想像できるプロジェクトに出会うと非常にワクワクします。
It happens in my head. It happens on pieces of paper. And honestly, even my music composition. It starts, because I'm pretty old school that way, I sketch everything out on paper. So it's all on notation on paper before I even touch the DAW. And then once I have all my ideas worked out and they're working beautifully, then what I do is I render them in the DAW. So when I'm thinking about something like Wise in the music system, I am planning out, kind of sketching on paper my ideas, and then I start testing those ideas within the tool.
Having a way to identify what your key pillars are for a game, like, oh, we want the player to feel sad all the time, like Last of Us, sad game.
What on earth do the Fireflies want with you?
We ain't talking about some walk in the park here.
Or we want the player to feel powerful, like God of War. I feel like finding a way to identify what are your key tenets for a game and finding a way to always represent those through the audio process.
Designing something inside of my DAW, that is where I really need to base the foundation of the sound and really know that whenever I hit spacebar to play the sound, it's going to sound exactly how I want to every time. As soon as I have that, that's when I really want to bring it into the Wise realm, where this sound can actually now be given life inside of the medium that it was designed for, which is the game.
When teams get it right and when they really want to execute on a high vision, the audio team is right there in the very beginning when the story is being written, when concept art is being designed, when things are being blocked out, so that we can allow music to be and sound design and dialogue to be part of that creative process rather than coming in after.
So yeah, I mean, as you know, it takes an army to make a game. Even the smallest games are a lot more complicated than you would expect to create. We might need to interact with, the visual effects department to see, okay, well, now after this torch is turning off, is there a sizzle? Is there smoke? Do we need to put audio on that? Maybe we have a really cool audio idea that informs how a character looks. Maybe we have a really cool audio idea that informs how the timing of the animation will be. And I feel like the more that other departments will collaborate earlier in the project, it kind of makes sure that the experience is holistic and it's kind of like meshed together well.
Sound pushes you to listen to the world in a different way. I mean, just if you hear one sound, you can dissect every ingredient, more or less, and try to recreate it in a different way. I mean, just like if you listen to fire, you dissect all the things that make up fire and what makes fire work.
I get a lot of my best creative ideas when I'm not thinking about the problem frequently when walking the dog. The tools help you realize the idea, but the creative idea comes to you in a way that could work for any medium, really. I mean, not only game audio, but music or painting or sculpture or whatever. Michelangelo famously said, when asked how do you do some great sculptures, he said, well, I take the stone, I see what's in it, and I take away all the rest of it.
One time that I tried to make fire instead of before I made it with aluminium foil and crisp wrappers. I took a stick, wrapped a t-shirt around it, and dipped it in ethanol, bioethanol, and lit it on fire in the living room. And I started waving around with it. I mean, apart from the sound not being sexy enough, it was really tiny. I mean, if you hear it in game, it's just like a match being lit. My wife was like, "What are you doing? Are you going to put the place on fire?" So yes, that was the last time that I used actual fire in my studio.
I really love the field recording part of my work because I get a little bit of dirt underneath my fingernails and I'm not only sitting by the computer in a studio. One of my favorite sounds I would credit to my old lead, David Jegatidze. It's the thermal imploder from the first Star Wars game, the bow boom.
まあサウンドの担当としていい音を作るっていうのは2の次3の次かなと僕は思っていて、ゲーム自体の遊びの部分ですよね。そのお客さんが遊んでどう楽しむかというか、何をこう好んでこのタイトルで実現して、それがお客さんにとって受け入れられるかっていうところを、その何ていうんですかね、聴覚というか耳の聴覚の担当としてどう面白さを広げられるかっていうことを考えて、それに沿ってじゃあどういうふうなデザインにしようとか、どういうオーディオの企画にしようかなっていうことは考えますね。
So when I worked on the inside, we had some time for pre-production, which is not really usual for me. So one thing was that I read an article from Stanford University about a singer who was very frustrated that her voice didn't sound like it did in her head when she were recording records. So they set up this experiment trying to measure out a kind of a transfer function, a kind of a filter that they could put into the sound in order to make it sound like it was in her head. And then I had the idea to use a human skull myself to try to replicate that idea. So I acquired like a real human skull, and then I was attaching like audio transducers to it, which is like a loudspeaker without a membrane. So you just remove the cardboard part, and you just have the driver, and you then attach the skull to the driver, and you project the sound into the skull. And then I recorded it with contact microphones. So the idea was as a way of processing the sound, and we actually ended up using it mostly for music, because we had originally the idea of creating a kind of B-movie kind of inspired score with synths, just a very specific texture that we used for the game.
I think game audio has changed in a few ways, like pretty fundamentally. I think the bar has really raised since I started, and it's hard for me to give advice to people starting out, because I know my reel when I got my first job would not cut it in today's day and age, and new people coming into the industry really have this high bar that they have to jump over.
So we decided to build an education program, started in 2014. That's something that is dear to my heart. I think that it comes with a responsibility, and that responsibility of transmitting knowledge, know-how, is something that we need to do. And over that, we have built a community and invited the community to share that. I remember the first Y Store, and the goal of the Y Store was exactly that, is to share their work, to share their knowledge. And a lot of company was like, oh, I don't want to share what our secret and stuff. And we were, no. The idea is really to transmit that knowledge to the community and make sure that, you know, the newcomers too, they learn and they have access to that knowledge.
What I'm really interested in over the next 5 and 10 years is to try and bring together the worlds of professional game development and academia and tuition of, say, university students together, because I'm currently between those two worlds, and I feel like I'm essentially bridging that gap to some extent, along with many others, to try and bring those closer together. It's really important for us that we're bringing people from university and from other forms of training into the game audio industry. And so there is this life cycle, essentially, where I see people who are, like me, experienced in the field, essentially giving back to educational and other outreach programs.
I think we're putting even more emphasis, or at the same amount of emphasis, into the community knowledge, bringing that through the form of blogs, of videos, to make sure that if you want to learn about interactive audio, you'll find most of your answers or most of your questions, answers to your questions. And those answers are not from us. Those answers are from maybe people using Wise, but from people that are real experts.
There are lots of applications where we can use games to actually teach hard skills. Things like using Microsoft Flight Sim for flight training, using things like Code Combat for programming. There is also, looking back to the mid-90s with Ubisoft, and French with Rayman was there. It was one of the earliest games that I played that was an education game or a serious game. And I think that influenced my interest in serious games going forward as well.
What is a video game? It's a big feedback machine. And it tells you perform right, you perform right. Oh, no, you're not performing right there. And you have instant feedback about everything you do. Imagine taking that mechanism and applying it to education for our children when they learn, and instantly, constantly, they can be reinforced into what they're learning and reading. They have it right, and so on.
Gaming is a very hands-on, tactile, learn by doing sort of environment, but it also implicates these other modes of learning. So sort of traditionally people will say, oh, I'm a visual learner, I'm an auditory learner, I'm a tactile learner. And what we've really learned from studies of those modes is that the most effective form of learning doesn't cater to just one style that is preferred by the person. It's actually multimodal, and it's engaging multiple forms. And that ends up being the most memorable and lasting for the student. So in a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, your actions as Arthur can cause you to have high or low honor, and the sounds of the game actually change as you're making those decisions and sort of indicate which path you're on.
Brothers make mistakes.
So while you're not being displayed like a number, it's not like I'm at 85 honor, the game is sort of telling you which ending you're heading toward, because the qualities of the sound are communicating that to us. So we have opportunities to sort of teach the players through the sound. We can certainly teach them through the visuals, and we can teach them through the experience of sort of inhabiting that space.
I recorded birds that only exist in Cuba. You know, it has 27 different types of birds that are endemic species. And I put them there because, as an audio geek, and there was an ornithologist that wrote me, say, oh, you put the tocororo and you put the cartacuba in the game. They only exist there. That's a good point. Hey, one person noticed. I was super happy. One person noticed, and I feel so good about it.
And the best example of this in very recent history is Assassin's Creed Origins. They were very excited about partnering with Egyptologists and rendering the tombs and the pyramids and all of these ancient cities in as much detail as possible to make it as historically accurate as they could. And they got so invested in that process, they created the discovery tours. So instead of just playing through the plot as, Bayek of Siwa, as the Medjed, they have a mode that is completely free of the fighting and the stealth aspects of the game, where you are just being led on a tour narrated by an Egyptologist. What a way to experience history, to sort of feel it in front of you. And then if we add the possibilities of virtual reality into the mix, you're going to feel like you're there. So I think there's a lot of potential for gaming to teach us in a way that will stick with us.
There's also a lot of uses that we don't know, like the viability of virtual reality for children's therapy and solving issues of like PTSD and things like that is tremendous. We were very fortunate to have had like Ubisoft do all of the work they did on measuring the Notre Dame before the fire, and being able to do that and taking that idea to experience and inform. I know all forms of media can be used for good or bad. That's not a new problem, and it's one we've been grappling with, I think, for the last 10,000 years. This is just the new chapter.
Gather, game. We're balling.
Our responsibility as game creators, number one, is to make the games fun. Everyone's playing them. Everyone wants to have somewhere where they can go and escape from life or go and make new friends.
I think game developers have a responsibility to make something interesting. I don't want to be just another human in every single game I'm playing. I want to try to be a mouse, or I want to try to be a beetle or an atom, or, it has such a breadth of possible experiences, and we need a lot of different stuff to keep our minds entertained, I think.
I think that escapism has always been an issue with games. We have always had this sort of suspension of disbelief. How many people have, lost their homes to Second Life or World of Warcraft or what name you? There's always, I think, some portion of people who can't turn that switch off.
I think that everyone that create a product of massive consumption has a responsibility. We don't know how many people we touch and in what phases or moment in their lives the product we release are interacting with their feelings or with their surroundings.
I got contacted by the World Health Organization that they are looking at hearing health for video gamers. And what can we do as an industry to help make our games safer for players to listen to? And I met a professional gamer who by 24 had given himself tinnitus because he really wanted to hear his footsteps really, really loudly. Doing so, he just cranked the volume, which meant the gunshots and the grenades were really, really loud. And so he actually ended up writing a little program that would detect when he wasn't active, like when he had been killed and when he was waiting to respawn. And it would just reach into his Windows system and lower the volume automatically. And then when he was back in the action, it raised it back up again. And I was thinking, he shouldn't have to write a piece of code that does that. We as creators of games should be doing that kind of thing for him.
Accessibility research is very interesting, and I actually just came from a panel with the WHO and their new initiative for safe listening, because they are recognizing that, I think they said it was by 2025, 1 in 4 adults will have hearing issues. And so I was at a roundtable where we were discussing what can we do on our end of things in the industry and talk about safe listening modes and the ways that we're mixing game audio and sounds, because it's not just how loud the sound is, it's the level of exposure for how long.
I'm sure anybody who has children who is watching this would also be able to agree that as a parent, when you watch your child so consumed by video games, it can be a little bit scary, to be honest, you know, especially with my son at the moment. He's so consumed with the video games that he's playing, but it's very much a communal experience for him. In this generation, it's about playing games together, remotely. They've got Discord going, they've got a call going. It's funny, they'll have like 3 of them chatting in Discord, playing 3 different games, not even playing multiplayer games. They're playing separate games, but they're talking about it as they're doing, or just chatting and stuff like that. And it's a really interesting communal form of kind of remote bonding, which in my generation, we never really had it like that. You know, if you want to bond with people, you go out and kick a ball or play in a band or do something like that. In his generation, games form a really kind of important hub of communication and interaction and social development. It's a personal issue that I struggle with sometimes.
I sort of briefly alluded to how I came to the topic of music and disability, that games often have the body as a central mechanic. And thinking about how often in games there's a communicative function of sound. So I started thinking about the way that the player's body is implicated in the process of play, and how much sound has an influence on our immersion and our relationship to what's going on in the gameplay. For instance, mental illness representation in sound. Very often, characters are set to be some sort of antagonist, and the simple way to give them a motivation for their evil actions is to say, well, they're crazy. I did all of these case studies of representation and stories that we are telling through sound and through the musical themes, and often portraying and perpetuating negative stereotypes about certain embodiments. There's an interesting case study in Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, where the developers were very thoughtful about reaching out to folks who had experienced auditory and visual hallucinations from likely a schizoaffective disorder, and that they worked with doctors. And one thing that's nice about that game is, though those visions are happening to the character, they are not the thing that she has to overcome. A large part of the game is sort of learning to work within these episodes occurring. And that's not the central puzzle mechanic, that's not what she's moving toward, that's not what she is ultimately overcoming. She's not trying to just get better from it. And so that was a very interesting story that I think got a lot of attention, because there was so much care to thinking about, you know, we could tell this story of this character without having the theme be the difference itself. There's a story that can happen to her, and she has a difference at the same time.
Because it's immersive art, and because it's art that you experience yourself, I think we have a very, very great responsibility to ensure that there is a positive objective, again, like film, through some other kind of secondary step, whether that's reflection or discussion or interaction with your fellow gamers who are doing it, or whatever that secondary step is. I think that it is really important that there is a responsibility there to make sure that overall the intent is positive.
Yeah, so the audio community is a bunch of big nerds, but I mean that in the most endearing way possible. So I feel like just being able to work with people who are so selfless and talented is great, but I feel like everyone I've met in game audio is just so kind and so into what they do, but in a way that they have such niche interests that like I learn from all the time.
I think the audio community is so nice because there's a collective realization that we're all trying to solve the same problems. And I think that's really exciting where, you know, you get into a room and everybody is talking about, oh yeah, I'm still also trying to solve that problem, or oh yeah, we had that problem a month ago or a year ago or something. And
they always sort of say, the game audio community seems like really tight-knit and they really share openly and freely. And I think there are so few people who really understand and get what game audio is, that when we actually get together and in a room where we know that the people we are with understand it too, is that we kind of just can't stop talking about it. Because we want to share, oh, we did this cool thing where we tied these dual RTPCs to a priority system that overrode the distance and made it sure that only the most dangerous enemy was the one making the noise. And we used sidechain compression and HDR to make sure everything else was not so, making the mix. Like, that's what we talk about.
People are always willing to mentor each other, to recommend gigs to each other, to collaborate and bring people on to projects and to share and to learn from each other. Every conference is like, hey, so we did this super cool thing. Let me tell you how we did this really cool thing so you can do this cool thing.
Now it's okay to help each other. You're not sitting on trade secrets that you don't want to share. You do actually want to show off what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if someone has a question, then because of ready-made tools like Unity, FMOD, Unreal, Wise, then we sort of are all in the same pool. I think the attitude towards not holding on to trade secrets and helping each other is one of the greatest game changers in the game audio community for the past 20 years.
I'm a big advocate for diversity in games, specifically game audio. I do a lot of work outside of my job, one with a nonprofit, to help increase the amount of diversity in this field.
I was born in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. Back then, when I grew up, we lived under a military dictatorship, so it wasn't very difficult to do a lot of things. And I started studying piano when I was 12 and getting into music, playing with bands. Once you start with music, the music lives inside you, like forever, even if you don't pay attention to it. We started, with a precarious situations as immigrants, and things were going better. So I think that is what motivates me.
So I've been to my first conference in 2017, and being the only woman of color there, and now I see so many women. I see so many people of color at Game SoundCon now. It's amazing. I think the community is going to change and evolve and be more inclusive, and jobs will be more inclusive as well once they start seeing like, oh, there's other people that want to actually do game audio.
It's tough. It's a hard industry. It's way harder than it used to be to get in. There's a lot of people that want to do it. So I think where we have the opportunity to help somebody out, it just is, why wouldn't you?
And then this year, we just started working on speaker stipends with Brian Schmidt for Game SoundCon. He came up with this idea. He was like, hey, I need more diversity in our speakers. And I was like, that's actually true. We need more representation. I do a lot of talks myself. So people like other women and women of color were coming up to me like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a woman of color speak or do a talk.
It's certainly very hard, it requires lots of work, but you also sort of have to be fortunate and had somebody else step in and sort of give you a chance and say, hey, we think you could do this. What can I do to help you?
I remember my very first game audio, or my very first GDC. I was on an escalator going up, and there was an escalator going down, and there was a woman on the escalator going down. The guy behind me went, look, a girl. I'm like, things have changed dramatically since then, and thank goodness.
It was kind of intimidating coming into the industry as a young woman freshly graduating from college, which I was also surrounded by a lot of men, into another industry where I was surrounded by a lot of men. One of the biggest things I want to do is try to make things easier and better and more accessible and less intimidating for women to enter the industry. So that's a big thing for me, whether it's mentoring people or talking with interns at our company or new hires or running our Women at PlayStation group. I want to make things easier for women entering the industry in the future, and I think that's one of my big motivations.
Malgré le fait que l'industrie des jeux vidéo, ce soit comme une espèce de jungle où le travail et les interactions sont parfois assez difficiles, il y a de la concurrence, il y a beaucoup de défis. Mais je crois qu'en investissant dans la communauté et puis en favorisant l'entraide, le partage, la créativité, des idées, on peut gagner beaucoup en tant qu'entreprise, mais aussi on peut faire gagner beaucoup à la communauté.
I think we do a really good job, but there's always room for improvement. And the more diverse it is, the more opinions you get, the better the end product will be for everything.
In 2015-16, there was like the rebirth of VR. Suddenly, one thing that was really important and was really good for us at the same time is that people really understood that the most immersive part of the VR goes through audio.
Yeah, so when I first started in the industry, spatial audio was just such either an afterthought or what is that? We don't have time for that.
You know, when working in a virtual reality environment, you have sometimes the need to really kind of direct a player's focus, and audio is a great way to do that. You can call attention to where the player should be directing their attention with sound, and spatialized sounds that are clearly spatialized in the world that you can locate are critical.
We were either implementing our own middleware to try to get our PlayStation 4 3D audio to work, or we were begging people for source code so that we could add, updates to it. So either rolling our own or hacking in things, right? But over the past 5, 6, 7 years, we've actually seen a lot of support from middleware engines and tooling partners and game engines as well too, because I hope everyone's getting as excited as we are about spatial audio, and the tools are showing that things are evolving and research is being done. Even a lot of middleware engines are collaborating with universities or pulling new research or new algorithms, right, from different papers and things like that.
Competitive games are also something where this is really important too. We worked on a first-person shooter, and it was really important that players could localize footsteps and enemy gunshots and enemy locations. And even though it wasn't a game that was in VR, adding spatialized elements like these critical sounds to pinpoint other enemy player locations was really important.
So audio from behind a wall or around a corner, you know how that sounds in real life. And as an audio designer, you might not want to have to tweak that much. You just want to put audio on an object and be standing somewhere, and it should just work. You want both the set and forget, it should just work magically, and also have the power to change it when you want to. And that is a lot of challenge.
Only man comes to an end.
A big shift I think we're going to see between now and several years' time is how reverbs are applied in virtual spaces. Currently, lots of teams, not all developers, but quite a lot, are going into virtual spaces, they're looking at the geometry of a space, and they're deciding where the reverb zones should be, and thus what reverbs should be applied to those zones.
I think the future relies a lot on spatial audio as we're moving into more VR-related type of projects, PSVR 2, the Tempest engine, as I mentioned before. These are the new experiences that we're going to be taking into account.
Research is happening constantly in the area too, whether it's new rendering algorithms or whether it's new technology that's being developed within propagation or like simulation of rooms and environments that the players are playing in within games. There's always just so many interesting problems to solve, and we're getting also the opportunity to educate developers both internally within Sony Interactive Entertainment and externally at conferences and things like that.
In the future, we should be able to use an algorithmic model which takes the geometry of the space, maps that geometry out, and says this is where the reverb zones go, and thus these are the reverbs that should be applied to those zones. And there are different levels of fidelity we could go into. We could look at every square inch of a piece of geometry as a different reverb, or we could look at different spaces and say, this is a large cathedral space based on what the AI algorithm is telling us it is.
And in 5-10 years from now, it will just be a default thing, and people won't even realize that it was not existing before.
But not only is it trying to make things sound realistic, as in localizing the audio in the correct positions and all that other sort of fun stuff, but it's games itself. Our game audio is generally hyper-realized. We're telling a story. And spatial audio actually provides quite a bit of tools and flexibility and things like that to try to tell the story either super realistic, like modeling the environments of the room you're in, or hyper-realistic, like focusing in on certain sounds or only making certain sounds like 3D objects around you, really focusing the player's attention.
If we are trying to emulate reality, then these tools are absolutely vital. Like the leaps that have been made within just the notion of spatializing audio within a 3D realm, it changes sometimes on a weekly basis, it feels like. And in a way, it feels like we're all just like, as sound designers right now, we're all just playing catch up to try to learn and master this new tech that evolves at such a rapid pace. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, so games have always been on the technological edge of entertainment. And many of the concepts that we leverage as part of that, 3D audio, dynamic parameterization, these are all things that have analogies across other industries. So whether we're talking about automotive and using the sensors that are part of today's electronic vehicles, or location-based entertainment, where we're taking into consideration the physical world in conjunction with the dynamic sound. Like, there's a ton to learn from what has been done in game audio over these years to continue to expand across other industries.
I think that game audio will become more and more powerful and more interactive. Like, we are now in an interactive audio and music era, and we can do with sound whatever we want.
The future of game audio is really creative people being more and more technical, and that line continuing to blur.
对我个人而言，游戏是艺术和科学世界里面的金字塔尖。当然，我觉得曾经电影是这一个塔尖，而在现代和未来，我相信游戏将会是这一个塔尖，因为它包含了太多科学和艺术，以及团队协作和管理相关的技术。
So I do believe that maybe in the future, creativity and creatives will be just working with ideas. They'll almost not think about technology at all.
50年前ってまだゲームが何もなかった時代だと思うんですけども、あったとしてもその電子音がピッて鳴るぐらいのものだったと思うんですけど、それが今やこの音で言ったらそのオーケストラの音があったりとか、あとそのスピーカーも2つから、場合によってはその本当にたくさんのスピーカーを並べて音を出すみたいなこともできているので、さらにここから50年後となると、相当な進化をするんだろうなとは思うんですけども、そうですね、ちょっと想像するのも結構難しいんですけど、おそらくなんかこのスピーカーがどうとか、っていう概念 もうなくなってくるのかなと、あんまりこの左のスピーカーと右のスピーカーがあってとか、そういうのもなくなってきて、もっとこう音が身近にあるというかですね、今サウンドバーみたいなものとかもあったりしますけど、天井から音が鳴ったりとか、いろんなものがあると思うんですけど、もっとそういった形でこの身近なところから音が鳴るみたいな、そういった世界になってくるんじゃないかなというふうにも思いますので、今のこの進化してきているところからさらにそうですね、僕らのこの想像を超えるような、時代が来ているんじゃないかなと。僕もその50年後、できればですね、長生きをしてその世界を体験してみたいなと思います。
The big buzz at this moment is AI. And I have to bring that up because we can't ignore this 800-pound gorilla. It's going to affect music, it's going to affect sound design and voice immensely.
In the same way that middleware was a massive productivity boost and the elimination of storage, I think AI will probably have that same productivity boost.
Since I heard the first examples of like AI-generated audio, I just had this idea that what if I can just make like a really, really strange orchestra play something to my specifications? So it's like an orchestra of 1,000 grand pianos playing together at the same time. It's like I really want that, especially something about scale. Like if you have something that contains a lot of detail in it, that can be difficult to make. Even with synthesis, it can be difficult to make because you have to kind of figure out what creates that sense of scale.
そうですね、50年後、だいぶなんかコントローラーを持って遊ぶっていうよりかは、ゲームの世界に入ってるみたいな状態になってたりするのかなっていうところで、今って多分VR とかのゴーグルをつけたりとかをしてこう、部分的に入ってるような感じだと思うんですけど、もっとなんか五感全体を使ってこう楽しむような世界とかになってたりするのかなっていうのと、そうなると面白いのかなっていう、僕やっぱ子供の頃に家でゲームしてるのも好きだったんですけど、外でなんかその遊んだりするのも楽しかったりして、それってやっぱ体を動かしたりとかそういうところだったので、なんかその全身を使って遊べるようなゲームが主体になってるみたいな世界になってると面白いなっていうふうに僕は想像しています。
I think we're currently in a really interesting time for large language models and generative AI. And there is this idea that we can, in the future, create audio assets and compositions using AI models.
The reason I think that it's exciting is not so much because AI is useful, but I think now it puts so much more responsibility on us as humans. Now we're going to have to do better than that. The human element of artistic achievement is going to have a new spotlight on it like never before.
When it comes to dialogue and dialogue pipelines, currently, of course, we write our lines largely by hand, and then we record them with human voice talent. We edit those lines, and we bring them into the game. I think in the future, we're going to be relying a lot more on text-to-speech and generative AI processes, where we're not looking at 10,000 or 100,000 lines of dialogue, but several billion lines of dialogue. I think the idea of using AI voices that are trained by human VO artists raises more questions than we're currently able to solve as well. Who owns that voice? How do we properly pay people for the use of that voice? And how do we ethically use that voice from production to production?
So with the AI, we can get more creative concepts. We can explore something that we haven't explored before. It can get us more ideas. And if it does some routine jobs, I think it's okay.
I guess for AI, it's like with most technology, cautious optimism. You can do so much good with AI to improve your tool set, to get rid of basic monotonous tasks. But there's also a darker side where we see people's art being taken away from them to train on these things, and people's art being used, their art styles being used without their permissions.
In a perfect world, you will be able to say, this object in my game world is emitting a sound. This is the sound it is emitting.
And all of the calculations of environment, reflection, propagation, anything else you're doing to it will simply be done.
There's been a tendency to, like the way that we mix games, that we very much set it up like a system, and I can kind of understand the fascination with that you create a world and you put sound objects to different objects and everything mixes itself. I really want people to make more like active decisions and kind of override those kind of more passive mixing techniques to create more spectacular moments, allow ourselves to experiment with in games.
我一直有一个想法，就是我坚信人类有一天是能够完完全全生活在这个数字世界里的。那我觉得，就互动体验来说，我们现在很多的感官上的体验，其实还是没有被完全数字化的。那我说这个数字化是指，你像我们的，但其实我们还是有很多那个感官还没有被完全的体验到的。比方说我的嗅觉、我的味觉、我的触觉，就这种东西都还没有被数字化在线。那我试想，是不是今后有一天我能够嘴里含一个什么样的东西，当我在玩这个游戏，我在品尝游戏里的食物的时候，这个小小的这个含片在我嘴里，它能够给我一些电信号的刺激，能够让我真正体验到游戏里我做的那个东西的这个味道。那我觉得在这方面就多维感官上面还有很长很长的路要走。
I also think that we're starting to get a little bit more credibility, I think, across different genres. Like we're starting to see big shows like The Last of Us. Was huge, right? And it was based on games, and we're starting to see more crossovers of games into other media. We're seeing directors take advice or influence from the audio of games and saying, I want my film to sound like this game.
The future of game audio, I think we're going to amazing places with it. And I think that's interesting that game audio is kind of in the forefront now on what you can do in audio in general. And now all the other media is taking inspirations from us instead of how it's been kind of before, where it was the opposite. So yeah, I think we are the leaders now.
But I still feel like we're far from fully realizing using audio, sound, video and music as a storytelling tool. And I really hope that in the future we will go deeper and deeper and use that to its intended use, which is we're all storytellers. It's what we're doing here.
I think it was maybe in the 1800s, this German word, the Gesamtkunstwerk, like the sum of all works, sort of the same like Gestalt root. And it's that at the time, opera was the art form that in order to happen, required all of the other art forms to be in play and in concert with each other. I think today, video games are the Gesamtkunstwerk. There is not an artistic discipline that does not come into play in the making of a game. There is so much that goes into crafting a game, and it is such a labor of love. I've had games make me laugh. I've had games make me cry, and everything in between.
I think the world needs to tell stories because the world needs to understand what goes on in other parts of the world. Video games can also give you a sense of grief, of sadness, happiness. You can experience all these things. I think the world needs video games just as much as it needs motion picture, books, radios, everything.
Throughout all of this, never forget, A, to have fun creating and to be creative. We get locked into our jobs and what we're supposed to be doing, and there's a lot of pressure and all of this. But think back to, why did you start this endeavor, this creative endeavor, this career path in the first place? It's because it was inspiring, it was fun, and you want to communicate something interesting and inspiring to your audience.
All of the issues of the world that we all know so well, where do video games fit into that? Is there social relevance for video games beyond the damage that we see it doing in some cases? It indeed does provide an important social outlet. It provides a source of social interaction, social development, camaraderie, sisterhood, brotherhood, that sense of belonging to a community.
I think that the most effective way to understand sound is realize how we are connected since we are in the womb. Sound, hearing is the first sense we develop. It should be like around the 20 weeks of gestation. And since that moment, we're so used to use our hearing. We can close our eyes at night, we cannot close our ears unless we intentionally mask the sound using other sounds. So that means that we have a huge connection, a huge information that we can use daily. We can perceive sound at 360 degrees all around us compared to the field of view we have, which is, I think the average should be around 110 degrees. That explains a lot about the power of sound and hearing.